Hi guys. So now I'm done with the whole apartment. So now it looks really fucking nice. And now I just got inspired to tell you guys a story because I was walking around here thinking about things while I was cleaning up. And so I just wanted to share this story with you guys. I don't know if it's useful, but it's been really seriously useful for me in my life. So I thought maybe it would be. So I think one of the most important things in life is to be able to change your mind about things. It's like your convictions are sometimes your worst enemy. Things that you're convinced of that are just not true or are hurting you in some way. And one very clear example for me that I've kind of brought back many times in my life when I felt like some of my convictions I needed to change was that I grew up in a very Christian family. I'm not myself today. I wouldn't call myself a Christian. I wouldn't call myself an atheist either, and that's actually because of this experience that I had. I touched on this in a podcast. There's a podcast on my podcast channel where I talk at length about my relationship with religion. But to keep it short here, I grew up in a very Christian family, which meant that I went to church up until I was like 9 years old every Sunday and Sunday school, and we had these groups where we met up with other people from the church, and that was kind of my family's whole like circle was like people from the church, and I never really believed in God as a child. I never really believed in God. I don't do now either. Um, and actually this weird thing that happened in our family, in my little family, like my mom and dad and me and my big brother, where my parents at some point decided that they didn't believe in God anymore, and so they kind of left the church, and that was kind of this weird thing that happened because we had been so used to being in that and being raised with like the beliefs of like my parents. Like I didn't believe in it, but we were told as children that like there is a heaven and there is a hell, and if you do bad things you go to hell, and there is a God and you can ask God for forgiveness or you can talk to God and stuff. Like that was the stuff that we were told as kids, and my parents were very serious about it back then. And then all of a sudden when I was around 9, 10 years old, they kind of flipped and just abandoned the whole thing. And so, because I had always been like challenging them on their beliefs as a child, because I didn't think it made any fucking sense whatsoever, it kind of meant that I had been right. So, imagine as a child growing up in this very serious religious family, and you are the only one who's not really into all of that sort of stuff, and you're kind of continually challenging those beliefs, and all of a sudden your parents changed their mind and you were actually right all along. I i believe that that change in our family has had some serious impacts on my life, on my belief in myself, for example. I think was strengthened by that experience, that I was actually right all along. I knew better than these figures that I viewed as authority figures. But another thing that it did was like, because I was very like anti-religion, anti-Christian. I thought it was a very stupid thing to believe in. And as I grew older and became a teenager and stuff, that kind of became a part of my identity, being like atheist and very like anti-religion, and thinking that that was just the most stupid thing ever. And this experience that I'm about to tell you guys about just changed that for me, because I had this experience at work. It's probably 6 years ago, maybe. And over lunch, I was talking to this colleague, and I was telling them about my religious family and that this whole thing, and they were like, "So, how do your family view you when you're not a Christian? Like, do they think you're a bad person, or?" And I just told them like, "No, I don't think they think that I'm like that we're bad people or anything. I think it kind of maybe feel sorry for us because we don't know any better." And at this point, when I was telling this, I was still like very atheist, anti religion. So I was kind of making fun of them. So I was kind of being like, they just feel sorry for us because we don't know any better, because we don't believe in God, and kind of like saying, "Oh, how stupid are they," right? And this colleague of mine just looked at me and was like, "But isn't that exactly the same way that you view them? Like you're kind of sorry for them because they don't know any better, because they believe in God." And that just hit me like a ton of fucking bricks. It did not feel nice. And I rejected it actually in the conversation. I rejected that and I was like, no, that's not the same thing at all. Um, but afterwards, when I thought about it, I had to realize that the reason why it felt so bad when my colleague said that was because it was absolutely right that I was being a hypocrite for kind of blaming them for viewing me exactly the same way as I was viewing them. And I started to see how, like, being very religious and, like, believing that people who are not religious are on the wrong side or that they are living their life wrong in some way, and being very atheist and believing that people who are religious are living their lives in the wrong way are exactly the same thing. Like in that way, atheism can become just as much a religion as being religious, because in the end, no one fucking knows, right? The atheists don't know. We don't know what happens when we die. Like no one knows, and that's the closest thing that you can come to a real, truthful answer to the big questions of how did we get here, like what happens after we die, is there a God, all of those kinds of questions. The closest thing that you can really come to a honest answer is I don't fucking know, and no one fucking knows, right? And so ever since that experience, that has kind of been my stance on religion, that I just don't know. I like it doesn't make sense to me to believe in like a figure, like a character, like a creator character. Um but I acknowledge the fact that I don't know, and so I cannot say that there isn't a God either. Like that I can't make that statement because I don't know. It would make sense to me if there wasn't, but like in all honesty, I just don't know, and no one knows, right? And I don't know what happens when you die. I personally think that nothing happens and you just kind of disappear and you rot in the ground. I think that that is what happens. But that is just a belief because I don't fucking know. I don't know if your consciousness goes somewhere else. Who knows? No one knows. And that is the truth. And that is, I think you're kind of avoiding that truth when you're either in the very strict like atheist camp or in the very strict like religious camp. It's both ways are too simple, and they don't really acknowledge that the world is just like it's a mystery, and we don't know, and we want to kind of try and give ourselves some sort of certainty. Oh shit. And that's why we tell ourselves these things. Like we give ourselves certainty about that there isn't a God or there is, and so we feel a little bit more safe with all of the unknowns of the world. And I've just really tried to accept the unknown and just like be okay with the fact that we don't know shit about anything about our own existence, and that's just the way things are. And so the lesson here, which is why I've gone back to this experience many times when I've had other experiences, is that sometimes when you get criticism or someone is like questioning some of your convictions and it really hurts you and it feels bad, it's sometimes because they're exactly right and you should be listening, and you should be thinking about whether this is one of those times where you should change your belief or your conviction about something, and maybe think about if there's something that you have made part of your identity because of some experience that you've had in your life where it was helpful for you to believe a certain thing, or and now it's just not helpful to you anymore. Now it's just become this conviction that you have that in some way are keeping you from really being like open-minded and tolerant to all kinds of different people. That was what it was for me, was that I was basically closing my mind off to certain ways of thinking, or I was looking down upon or and judging certain people for their beliefs, which is just a stupid thing to do, because basically when you judge anyone, you also become more like prone to judging yourself, which is a bad thing, because it just ruins your self-esteem if you're constantly judging yourself. And if you're judging other people a lot, like dividing people into like smart and dumb people or good and bad people, it usually spills over into like you're thinking about yourself, and you're probably pretty judgmental about yourself as well. So kind of breaking down that judgment thing, starting with the religious thing, which was so grounded in me because of my upbringing, has really helped me to stop judging myself as well, and to start like accepting myself a lot more for who I actually am, and liking myself for who I actually am. So not judging anyone based on their religious beliefs, which I was something that I prided myself on at some point, to like that I was able to see through the bullshit and call people on it and say what you're believing is stupid. That thing I have totally like walked away from, and now I'm very like accepting of other people's like beliefs or thoughts, and I just try to understand why people believe the way that they do, and see if there's anything in it that I can learn something from. Because basically you can learn something from everyone if you're open-minded and if you're not judgmental. um and that's just a better strategy for life. I think you learn way more, and you become a way nicer person to other people and to yourself. So yeah, that was just what I wanted to share. So I hope maybe it was useful to you, and I look forward to making some more like full scale videos when I get set up in the new apartment. And until then, I'll just see you guys in the next video.